Hey guys, tonight we step into the frostbitten boots of an Edwardian farmer, somewhere in the early 1900s, where winter isn't just a season, it's a battle. Picture yourself standing on a creaky porch, breath clouding in the air, as the first snowflakes of November dust your wool cap. The fields stretch out, barren and silent, under a sky heavy with the promise of months-long cold. Your farm, a patchwork of grit and hope, is about to be tested by nature's iciest grip. Spoiler alert. You probably won't survive this without some serious cunning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're listening from as we dive into this chilly tale. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the edge of your farm, the wind slicing through your coat like a dull knife. Winter in the Edwardian era, roughly 1901 to 1914, was no joke for farmers in places like rural England, North America, or the Scandinavian countryside. The Industrial Revolution's hum might have been loud in cities, but out here, it's just you, your family, and a whole lot of snow. The mainstream fact is that winters during this period could be brutal, with temperatures often dipping below 0 Fahrenheit in northern regions, freezing wells, and locking fields in ice for months. Farmers like you had to be ready, because a single misstep could mean starvation by February. You're not just fighting the cold, you're fighting time itself, racing to prepare before the first blizzard buries your world. Your first task is securing the homestead. You trudge across the yard, boots crunching on frost, to inspect the farmhouse walls. Built from timber or stone, depending on your region, these walls are your fortress. You check for cracks where the wind might sneak in, stuffing them with rags or clay. A quirky tidbit from the era. Some farmers smeared cow dung mixed with straw into gaps as insulation, gross but effective. Smells like survival, doesn't it? You laugh to yourself, imagining explaining that to a city slicker. Your chimney's next. A blocked flue could choke the house with smoke, so you climb a rickety ladder to sweep it clean, cursing the cold that numbs your fingers. The barn looms in the distance, its roof already dusted white. You know the animal scows, pigs, maybe a few stubborn chickens there counting on you. You haul straw bales to insulate their stalls, your breath puffing like a steam engine. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers prioritized livestock over their own comfort. But out here, it's clear, no animals, no food, no future. You pat the flank of your old mare, her warmth a small comfort against the chill. The sky's turning leaden now, and you feel the weight of what's coming. You're not just preparing a farm, you're preparing for war against winter. Back inside, you gather your family around the kitchen table, its wood scarred from years of use. Your spouse, maybe a couple of kids, look to you with a mix of trust and worry. You assign tasks: chopping wood, mending blankets, checking the pantry. The kids groan, but you shoot them a grin. Someone's got to keep the fire going, or we'll all be icicles by Christmas. Your pantry's your lifeline, stocked with whatever you manage to harvest before the frost. Potatoes, turnips, maybe some apples if you're lucky. You check the barrels, praying the mice haven't beaten you to it. A good farmer, plans for pest another mainstream fact, as crop loss to rodents was a constant threat, sometimes wiping out a quarter of stored grain. You pause to warm your hands by the stove, the cast iron beast already glowing. It's tempting to linger, but there's no time. You grab an axe and head to the woodpile, splitting logs until your shoulders ache. Each swing is a promise to keep the cold at bay. Oh, and here's a little Edwardian weirdness. Some farmers believed stacking wood in a crescent shape brought good luck for a milder winter. You try it, mostly because, well, why not? You chuckle, thinking of your neighbor, Old Man Jenkins, swearing by his lucky woodpile last year right before a blizzard buried it. The day's fading now, and you take one last look across your land. The fields are quiet, the horizon swallowed by grey. You're as ready as you can be, but winter's a tricky opponent. Historians still argue whether preparation or sheer stubbornness saved more farmers in these times. You're betting on both. You head inside, the door creaking shut behind you, and feel the first real bite of the season's cold. It's going to be a long fight, but you're in it. You wake to a world hushed by snow, the kind that piles up overnight and turns your farm into a silent, white fortress. Your breath catches as you peer through the frosted window, the glass cold enough to sting your fingertips. Stockpiling food is your mission now, a race against winter's long, lean months. Every potato, every jar of preserves, every sack of grain is a lifeline, and you're not about to let it slip away. The pantry's your battlefield, and you're determined to outsmart the cold. You trudge to the root cellar, a low, earthen room dug beneath the farmhouse. The air down here smells of damp soil and apples, a mix that's oddly comforting. You check the barrels of potatoes, their skins rough under your calloused hands. Edwardian farmers, like you, relied heavily on root vegetables' mainstream fact. Potatoes and turnips were staples, often making up half a family's winter diet in rural areas. You roll a few spuds in your palm, inspecting for rot. One bad apple or potato could spoil the bunch, and you're not risking it. You toss a suspect one aside, muttering about how it's probably plotting against you. Next, you climb a ladder to the attic, where strings of dried apples and onions hang like rustic garlands. You preserved these in autumn, slicing fruit thin and stringing it up like some pioneer version of Christmas lights. A quirky tidbit. Some farmers swore by rubbing apples with a cloth dipped in glycerin to keep them from shriveling. Sounds like a spa treatment for fruit, doesn't it? You smirk, imagining your apples getting pampered while you're out here freezing. You check the strings, making sure no molds crept in. The onions are pungent, stinging your eyes, but they'll add flavor to the endless stews you'll be eating. Back in the kitchen, you inspect jars of preserved plums, berries, maybe some pickled beets if you fancy. You sealed these in the fall, boiling jars until your arms ached, praying the lids would pop just right. A bad seal means spoilage, and you're not about to lose a jar of blackberry jam to carelessness. You hold one up to the dim light, checking for cloudiness. All clear. You set it back, satisfied, but not before picturing the kids' faces when they get a rare spoonful of sweetness. Winter's stingy, but you've got a few tricks to keep morale up. Grains 18 comes next. You haul sacks of wheat and oats to the barn loft, where it's drier. Mice are the enemy here, remember those pantry pests from last section. You sprinkle a mix of ash and crushed herbs around the sacks, a trick your grandmother swore kept rodents at bay. Historians still argue whether these old folk remedies worked better than Psyche. You're skeptical. Most say traps and poisons were more effective, but you're not taking chances with your harvest. You lay out cheesecloth and broken glass, hoping superstition doesn't jinx you. The grain's your future, and you're guarding it like a dragon. You head to the smokehouse, a small shed where you cure meat. The hams and bacon slabs hang in the chilly darkness, wrapped in muslin. You check the salt levels, rubbing a handful on each piece to test its bite. Edwardian farmers often smoked meat over slow fires, a process that could take days but preserved it for months. You smile, thinking of the time you tried to help with the fire and ended up with a smoky mess. Live and learn, you told yourself. You hang the meat back up, knowing it's your ticket to hearty winter soups. The shelves in the smokehouse are lined with jars of lard, a fat that's been your secret weapon for cooking and waterproofing boots. You scoop out a bit, rubbing it into your hands to check its texture smooth. Like a cold cream, you think, chuckling at the comparison. It's versatile stuff, and every farmer's got a stash. You stack the jars carefully, ensuring none tip over. A spilled jar of lard is a slippery disaster, and you're not mopping the smokehouse floor this winter. You pause by the cellar door, the cold seeping through your boots. The silence out here is eerie, broken only by the crunch of your steps. You think about the city folk, cozy in their heated homes, and laugh. They'd last about 10 minutes out here. You've got work to do, and it starts with checking the stores again. You circle back to the pantry, double-checking the flour sacks. You poke at one, feeling for weevils. Those little devils can ruin a whole batch, and you're not about to let them win. By midday, you're back in the barn, sorting through the last of the harvest. You pull out a few carrots, their orange skins dull with frost. They're tough as nails, but they'll soften in a stew. You toss them into a basket, already dreaming of the hot meal they'll become. The wind's picking up outside, rattling the barn doors. You secure them with a wooden bar, knowing a storm could blow them open. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers were more resourceful than modern ones, but you know it's all about preparation out here. You spend the afternoon hauling more wood, the pile growing like your worries. Each log is a piece of warmth, a bulwark against the cold. You stack them in that crescent shape again. Why not tempt fate? You think, grinning. The kids are inside, probably sneaking a bit of jam. You let it slide. Winter's long, and they deserve a treat. By dusk, you're back in the kitchen, warming your hands by the stove. The pantry's looking solid, the smokehouse is stocked, and the cellar's full. You're ready for winter's worst, or so you hope. You stand in the kitchen, the heart of your Edwardian farmhouse, where the cast-iron stove glows like a small, stubborn sun. The cold presses against the windows, but inside, the fire's warmth wraps around you, a fleeting shield against winter's bite. Your focus now is the hearth, the pulsing center of your home, keeping you and your family from freezing in these brutal months. Every crackle of the fire is a reminder. Without it, you're done for. You kneel by the stove, feeding it logs from that crescent-shaped pile you stacked. Lucky or not, it's doing the job. The wood pops as it catches, sending a shower of sparks up the flue. Keeping a fire going in the Edwardian era was a science and an art, a mainstream fact backed by the reality that most rural homes relied on wood or coal stoves for both heat and cooking. You've got to balance the draft, just right too much air, and the fire burns too fast, too little, and it smothers. You adjust the damper, feeling like a conductor of a very toasty orchestra. The firewood pile outside is your lifeline, but it's not infinite. You trudge out to check it, the snow crunching under your boots like a chorus of tiny complaints. Each log was split by hand, probably by you in the fall, your arms aching with the memory. You grab an armful, the bark rough against your coat, and haul it inside. A quirky tidbit from the time. Some farmers believed burning a specific type of wood, like ash, kept evil spirits at bay. You roll your eyes, tossing an ash log into the fire anyway. Better safe than haunted, you mutter with a smirk. The kitchen's alive now, the stove's heat thawing your fingers. You set a kettle on, the steam promising tea, or maybe just a warm mug to cradle. Cooking's a daily ritual here, and the stove's your only tool. You stir a pot of porridge, the oats from your stockpile bubbling like a slow volcano. It's not gourmet, but it's fuel, and you're grateful. You glance at the kids, huddled nearby, their cheeks pink from the warmth. Bet they'd trade this for a candy bar, you think, chuckling at the thought of explaining sugar rationing to a modern kid. The fire's not just for cooking, it's for survival. You check the bedrooms, where the heat barely reaches. You've hung blankets over doorways to trap warmth, a trick every farmer knew. The main bedroom's got a small fireplace too, but you're stingy with it wood's too precious to burn all night. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers slept in unheated rooms to save fuel or just toughed it out for pride. You're leaning toward necessity. Pride doesn't keep your toes from turning blue. You head to the barn to grab more straw for insulation, the cold biting your ears as you cross the yard. The wind's got a nasty edge, whistling through the cracks in the barn walls. You stuff straw into gaps, remembering that cow dung insulation from earlier. Still not desperate enough for that, you think, grinning. Back inside, you check the chimney again, sweeping out ash that could clog it. A blocked chimney's a death trap, filling the house with smoke faster than you can say carbon monoxide. You're careful, methodical, because one mistake could cost everything. By afternoon, you're back at the stove, baking flatbread on its surface. The dough's simple flour, water, a pinch of salt, but it smells like heaven. You flip it with a spatula, the sizzle a small victory. The kids beg for a piece, and you pretend to scold them, saying, "Eat this, and you're chopping wood tomorrow." They laugh, knowing you're half serious. Food and heat are tied together out here, each meal a reminder of the fire's importance. You sit by the hearth as evening falls, the fire's glow casting shadows on the walls. The house creaks under the wind's assault, but the warmth holds. You think about city folk, with their fancy gas heaters, and snort, they'd probably burn the house down trying to light this thing. The fire's hypnotic, its crackle lulling you into a rare moment of peace. You add another log, watching it catch, and feel a quiet pride. You're keeping winter at bay, one flame at a time. The night's settling in, and you bank the fire for longevity, piling ash over the coals to keep them smouldering till morning. You check the stove's dampers again, ensuring a slow burn. The house is as warm as it's going to get. and you're thankful for it. You glance at the woodpile through the window, mentally counting logs. It's enough for now, but you'll need to chop more soon. The fire's your ally, but it's a demanding one, and you're learning its rhythms like a dance you can't afford to miss a step in. You trudge through the snow toward the barn, your breath puffing like a steam locomotive in the frigid air. The animals, your cows, pigs, and a few scrappy chickens are counting on you to keep them alive through this Edwardian winter. The barn's walls creak under the wind's pressure, and you feel the weight of responsibility as you push open the heavy door, its hinges groaning like an old man getting out of bed. Your job now is to shelter these creatures, ensuring they don't just survive, but stay productive enough to carry your farm through to spring. Inside, the air smells of hay and manure, a mix that's oddly grounding. You check the cows first, their big eyes blinking at you from the stalls. Mainstream fact: Edwardian farmers knew livestock were critical, providing milk, eggs, and eventually meat, with dairy cows alone supplying up to 80% of a family's protein in winter. You grab a pitchfork and toss fresh straw into their stalls, creating a thick bed to insulate them from the cold floor. The cows low softly, as if thanking you, and you give one a pat. "Keep the milk coming, Bessie," you murmur with a grin. The pigs are next, huddled in their pen, snuffling at the trough. You pour in a mix of boiled turnips and grain scraps, a recipe you've perfected to stretch your stores. A quirky tidbit: some farmers swore by tossing a handful of crushed acorns into the feed, claiming it made the pork taste sweeter. You try it, sprinkling some in, though you're not sure if it's science or wishful thinking. If the pigs start singing, "I'll know it worked," you joke to yourself, chuckling as you dodge a particularly curious snout. The chickens are the real divas, clucking indignantly from their roosts. You check their coop, a corner of the barn you've lined with extra straw and old blankets. Frostbites are real threat combs, and wattles can freeze overnight, so you've hung burlap sacks to block drafts. You scatter cracked corn, watching them peck like they're at a five-star buffet. Keeping chickens laying in winter is a nightmare. Cold and short days mess with their rhythm. You've heard of farmers using lanterns to trick hens into thinking it's spring, but you're not there yet. Maybe next week, you think, rolling your eyes at the thought of playing candlelit chicken whisperer. You check the barn's walls, patching gaps with more straw and mud. Yep, that cow dung trick from earlier is still on your mind, but you're sticking with mud for now. The wind's relentless, sneaking through every crack like it's got a personal vendetta. You climb to the loft, where hay bales are stacked like a fortress. You pull a few down, spreading them out to keep the animals warm. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers overstocked hay to compensate for harsh winters, or just got lucky with bumper harvests. You're not taking chances. Every bale's a buffer against starvation. Water's the next challenge. The troughs are frozen solid, a crust of ice glinting in the dim light. You grab an axe and chip away, muttering about how you didn't sign up for ice sculpting. You haul buckets from the house, where you've melted snow over the stove. Another reason to love that fire, you think, recalling its glow from last section. The animals drink greedily, and you feel a small victory. Dehydration's as deadly as cold, and you're not losing a single cow to it. By midday, you're sweating despite the chill, your coat heavy with damp snow. You check the barn's roof, praying it holds against the next blizzard. A leak could soak the hay, and mouldy feed's a death sentence for livestock. You climb a ladder, inspecting the shingles, and patch a weak spot with tar and a scrap of tin. Not winning any architecture awards, but it'll do, you quip, sliding back down. The kids are supposed to be helping, but you spot them tossing snowballs outside. You yell, "Get in here before you're feeding pigs all winter." Asterisk. They scamper in, giggling, and you hand them a broom to sweep out old straw. Evening falls, and you do a final check. The animals are settled, their breath steaming in the cold air. You toss extra feed to the chickens, hoping it'll coax out a few eggs tomorrow. The barn's as snug as you can make it, but you know winter's got more tricks up its sleeve. You head back to the house, the snow crunching underfoot, and glance at the barn one last time. The animals are your lifeline, just as much as that pantry from earlier. You're keeping them alive, and they're keeping you going. It's a fragile balance, but you're holding it together for now. You stand in the doorway of your farmhouse, the wind clawing at your face like an impatient cat. The cold is a living thing out here, and you're about to face it head-on to keep yourself warm. Layering up in the Edwardian era is no fashion show. It's a survival strategy, and you're stitching, mending, and bundling into every scrap of clothing you've got. Your goal is to turn yourself into a walking cocoon, one that can brave the snow while still hauling firewood or checking on those pigs from last section. You start with the basics, pulling on a pair of long woolen underwear that itch like a bad decision. These were standard for Edwardian farmers' mainstream fact. Wool was the go-to material, valued for its ability to trap heat even when damp, unlike cotton, which could leave you shivering in your own sweat. You tug on a second pair, just to be safe, and catch your reflection in a cloudy mirror. Looking like a lumpy sausage, you think, chuckling, but warmth trumps vanity out here. Over that goes a flannel shirt, its buttons worn but sturdy, followed by a thick wool sweater your mother knit years ago. The real armor is your coat, a heavy beast of wool and sheepskin that smells faintly of lanolin and last year's sweat. You check its seams, needle and thread in hand, patching a tear from when you snagged it on a fence post. A quirky tidbit. Some farmers rub their coats with beeswax to make them waterproof, a trick you're tempted to try. You dig out a tin of wax, smearing it on with your fingers, and grin, if the cows start slipping on me, I've gone too far. It's sticky work, but you're not about to let a soggy coat ruin your day. Your hands need protection too, so you pull on mittens. Gloves are for city folk who don't know better. Mittens keep your fingers together, trapping heat, and these ones are lined with rabbit fur, a gift from a neighbor who's a better hunter than you. You flex your hands, testing their grip, because you've got to wield an axe later. Your boots are next, sturdy leather ones you've treated with that lard from the smokehouse, another callback to your stockpile savvy. They're not pretty, but they're dry, and that's what counts when you're knee-deep in snow. You wrap a scarf around your neck, tucking it into your coat to block drafts. It's a long knitted thing, probably made by your spouse, and it's got a few holes from years of use. You don't mind, it's like wearing a hug. You add a felt hat, its brim wide enough to keep snow out of your eyes. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers prioritized function over style, or if they secretly cared about looking good at the market. You're firmly in the function camp, nobody's judging your hat when you're shoveling manure. Outside, you test your layers, trudging to the woodpile. The wind tries to find a way in, but your defenses hold. You swing the axe, splitting logs, and feel the warmth of effort spreading through you. It's a workout, and you're glad for it. Beats a gym membership, you joke to yourself, imagining explaining cardio to your neighbors. The kids are nearby, bundled up like little marshmallows, trying to help but mostly making snow angels. You call out, "Keep that up," and you're on firewood duty till spring. Asterisk. They laugh, scattering snow, and you shake your head, grateful for their energy. Back inside, you check the family's clothing. The kids' coats need patching, and you set to work with a needle, cursing when you prick your finger. Your spouse is mending socks, a pile of wool at their side. You share a look, both knowing that a single hole in a sock can mean frostbite out here. You've got a spare blanket to cut up for extra scarves. A last resort, but a smart one. Every stitch is a barrier against the cold, and you're not taking chances. By evening, you're layered up again, ready for the night's chores. The fire from that trusty stove, remember its glow? Keeps the house bearable, but outside, it's all on you. You step into the yard, the snow crunching under your boots, and feel the weight of your clothes. They're heavy, but they're working. You glance at the barn, where the animals are snug thanks to your earlier efforts, and feel a flicker of pride. Winter's a beast, but you're dressed for the fight, one woolen layer at a time. You crunch through the snow toward your neighbor's farm, a half-mile trek that feels like a marathon in this cold. Your breath clouds the air, and your mittens those rabbit fur ones from last section grip, a sack of potatoes you're hoping to trade. In the Edwardian era, winter isolates you, but community barter networks are your lifeline, stitching together farms like patches on a quilt. You're not just swapping goods, you're building alliances to outlast the season's grip. The neighbor's house comes into view, smoke curling from its chimney like a lazy signal flag. You knock, and Old Man Jenkins, with his beard like a frozen waterfall, ushers you inside. The warmth of his kitchen hits you like a hug, and you set your sack on the table. Bartering was a cornerstone of rural life mainstream fact. Edwardian farmers often traded goods rather than cash, especially in winter when money was scarce and roads were impassable. You've got potatoes. Jenkins has smoked fish. You haggle, each of you pretending it's life or death, but there's a twinkle in his eye. Throw in some of that weird acorn-fed pork, you tease, recalling the quirky pig-feeding trick from earlier. He laughs, offering a jar of pickled cabbage instead. You settle on a deal, your potatoes for his fish, and a small bundle of kindling. It's not just about the goods, it's about trust. You know Jenkins will have your back if a blizzard buries your woodpile, just like you'd lend him a shovel if his barn roof caves. This network of favours kept communities alive. A quirky tidbit: some farmers sealed deals with a shared shot of homemade cider, believing it blessed the trade. You and Jenkins skip the cider, too cold to get tipsy, you joke but you shake hands. The pact as binding as any contract. Back home, you stash the fish in the smokehouse, next to that lard you're so proud of. You're already planning a stew, maybe with some of those turnips from your stockpile. The kindling goes to the woodpile, that crescent-shaped stack you're still hoping is lucky. You think about the other neighbour's widow Margaret with her honey, the Thompsons with their extra blankets. You've traded with them before, swapping eggs for thread, or a sack of oats for a repaired axe handle. It's a web of give and take, and you're all tangled in it, stronger for it. You trudge to the next farm, a basket of dried apples under your arm. The snow's deeper now, tugging at your boots like a needy child. You're after candles, your supplies low, and you're not about to sit in the dark all winter. The Millers, a young couple, greet you with flushed cheeks and a toddler clinging to their legs. You trade the apples for a dozen tallow candles, their waxy scent promising light for those long nights. Better than burning the furniture, you quip, and the Millers laugh, offering you a cup of weak tea before you head back. The walk home is brutal, the wind slicing through your scarf. You think about how these trades aren't just practical, they're social glue. Winter can make you feel like the last soul on earth, but a quick chat with Jenkins or the Millers reminds you you're not alone. Historians still argue whether these barter networks were driven by necessity or a deep-seated community spirit. You figure it's both. You trade to survive, but you talk to stay sane. Back in your kitchen, you light one of the new candles, its flame flickering like a tiny echo of your stove's glow. The kids are thrilled, begging to stay up later. Nice try, you say, but candles don't grow on trees. They groan, and you grin, knowing you've got enough light to last a while, thanks to the Millers. You sit by the fire, tallying your trades in your head. Potatoes, apples, and a bit of goodwill for fish, kindling, and candles. It's a good haul, but you're already planning the next swap. Maybe Margaret's honey for some of your flour? As night falls, you check the pantry, feeling the weight of your community's support. Those potatoes you traded came from your stockpile, and the fish will stretch your meals. You're part of something bigger, a network that's as vital as the fire in your hearth or the wool on your back. You bank the stove, the warmth a reminder of why you brave these treks. Winter's a solitary fight, but you're not fighting it alone. You stand on the frozen edge of a nearby lake, the ice glinting under a weak winter sun like a mirror you're about to shatter. Your breath puffs out, and your mittens grip a heavy saw, its teeth worn but sharp enough for the job. Ice harvesting is your focus now, a ritual that feels like wrestling winter itself to keep your food fresh through the Edwardian cold. You're not just cutting ice, you're carving out a way to make your stockpile last until spring. You start sawing, the blade biting into the ice with a gritty rasp. Each stroke sends a shiver up your arms, but you keep going, carving out blocks the size of a small table. Mainstream fact: ice harvesting was a big deal in the early 1900s, with farmers and commercial outfits cutting millions of tons from lakes and rivers to store in insulated ice houses. You aim for blocks about a foot thick, solid enough to last, but not so heavy you'll throw out your back. You chuckle, thinking, if I wanted a workout, I'd have stayed in the barn with the pigs. Asterisk. The ice house, a low shed packed with sawdust, waits nearby. You haul the blocks there, sliding them across the snow with a sledge. The sawdust is key. It insulates the ice, slowing the melt even in milder months. A quirky tidbit: some farmers swore by layering ice with pine needles, claiming it kept blocks colder longer. You stick with sawdust, but you toss in a handful of needles anyway, Can't hurt, right? Asterisk, you mutter, half expecting the ice to thank you. You stack the blocks carefully, like a frosty game of Tetris, leaving space for air to circulate. Back at the lake, you keep cutting, your hands numb despite those rabbit fur mittens from earlier. The lake's surface is a patchwork of cuts now, and you're careful not to fall through. That'd be a cold way to ruin my day, you joke to yourself. You've got a helper today, young Tom from the neighbouring farm, who's eager but clumsy. He nearly drops a block, and you shoot him a look. Lose that, and you're swimming for it, asterisk, you say, grinning as he blushes. The kids back home would love this job, but you're not risking them near open water. The ice is for your food, those potatoes, apples, and smoked fish from your trades. You've got a small icebox in the cellar, a wooden contraption lined with tin. You'll pack it with these blocks to keep butter solid and milk from souring. Historians still argue whether rural farmers relied more on ice houses or root cellars for preservation, but you're using both, hedging your bets. The cellar's great for roots, but meat and dairy need the ice's chill, especially when the snow starts melting in March. You pause to catch your breath, the cold air stinging your lungs. The sledge is loaded, and you drag it back to the ice house, the runners hissing on the snow. You're sweating now, a weird contrast to the freezing air. Each block you stack feels like a small victory, another month of preserved food. You think about that jar of pickled cabbage from Jenkins ice will keep it crisp, maybe even edible by April. You smile, imagining the kids' faces when they taste it, probably not a fan favourite. By afternoon the ice house is half full, and your arms are screaming. You check the lake one last time, marking spots for tomorrow's cuts. The sun's dipping low, painting the ice gold, and you take a moment to admire it. Winter's brutal, but it's got a strange beauty, like it's daring you to keep up. You head home, the sledge empty but your mind full of plans. The ice will guard your food, just like the fire guards your warmth and the barn guards your animals. Back in the kitchen, you warm your hands by the stove, still glowing, thank goodness, and check the icebox. It's got a few small blocks left from last week, but you'll replace them soon. You sip tea, the mug steaming, and think about the effort it takes to keep this farm running. Ice harvesting isn't glamorous, but it's as vital as that wood pile or those woolen layers. You're building a fortress against winter, one block at a time, and you're not backing down. You stand in the dim light of dawn, staring out at fields blanketed in snow, their edges softened like a half-erased sketch. Your breath clouds the air as you pull on your boots, the leather still stiff from that lard treatment you applied earlier. Winter's locked your land in ice, but you're not giving up on coaxing life from it. Your focus now is nurturing hardy crops, the stubborn few that can survive the Edwardian cold, keeping your farm from becoming just a snow-covered memory. You trudge to the small greenhouse, a rickety structure of wood and salvaged glass you built last summer. It's not much, but it's your secret weapon against the frost. Inside, the air is slightly warmer, smelling of damp earth and hope. Mainstream fact: Edwardian farmers often used cold frames or greenhouses to extend the growing season, especially for greens like kale or cabbage, which could withstand temperatures down to 20 Fahrenheit. You check your rows of kale, their leaves crinkled but green, defying the season. You brush snow off the glass, muttering, "If these plants can handle this, so can I." Asterisk. You've got a few tricks up your sleeve, learned from years of trial and error. You've banked straw around the greenhouse's base, a nod to that barn insulation from earlier, to trap heat. A quirky tidbit: some farmers buried hot coals in pits beneath their cold frames to warm the soil sounds like a fire hazard. But you're tempted. Instead, you've layered manure under the dirt, its slow decomposition giving off just enough heat to keep the frost at bay. Smells like victory, you joke, wrinkling your nose as you fork more in. The kale's thriving, and you're already dreaming of a fresh salad to break up the monotony of potato stew. Outside, you check a small plot of winter rye, a grain tough enough to sprout even under snow. You kneel, brushing away the white to see green shoots poking through. It's not much, but it'll be animal feed come spring or bread, if you're desperate. You've mulched it with straw and old leaves, a blanket against the cold. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers grew winter crops for survival or to flex their agricultural prowess. You're just trying to keep the pantry stocked, no bragging required. Back in the greenhouse, you water the kale with a bucket of melted snow, warmed just enough on the stove. Thanks again, trusty fire. The plants are finicky, needing just the right amount of moisture. Too much, and they rot. Too little, and they wither. You're like a nurse, tending to each leaf, clipping any that look yellow. The kids wander in, curious, and you hand them a small trowel. Dig, don't destroy, you say, smirking as they poke at the soil like it's a treasure hunt. They're learning, and you're glad farming's a family affair out here. You move to the root cellar next, checking on stored seeds for spring planting. You've got packets of turnip and parsnip seeds, tucked in a tin to keep mice out. Those little thieves from the pantry days are still lurking. You sort through them, planning which to sow in the greenhouse next. It's a gamble, growing in winter, but every sprout is a win. You think about city folk, buying their greens from markets, and snort, they'd probably think kale's a fancy hat. Out here, it's your lifeline. By afternoon, you're back outside, checking a small patch of cabbages you've covered with burlap sacks. They're tough, but a hard freeze could still kill them. You pile more snow around their bases, a trick to insulate them from sudden thaws. It's counterintuitive, but snow's a decent blanket nature's irony, you suppose. You're exhausted, your back aching from bending, but the sight of green in this white world keeps you going. You head back to the greenhouse, reinforcing a cracked pane with a scrap of wood. Not winning any beauty contests, you quip, but it'll hold. As dusk settles, you stand in the greenhouse, the glass fogging with your breath. The kale still standing, the rye holding on, and you feel a quiet pride. Winter's trying to starve you out, but you're fighting back with every seed and straw bale. You think of that ice house, keeping your food fresh, and the barn, sheltering your animals. It's all connected, this delicate dance of survival, and you're still in step. You wake to a world locked in snow, the kind that piles against your door like an uninvited guest. Your boots, still stiff with lard from earlier, crunch as you step outside, the cold biting your face like a cranky dog. Today's about the daily grind, those relentless chores that keep your Edwardian farm alive, despite winter's best efforts to bury it. You're trudging through drifts, shovel in hand, to maintain the fragile rhythm of survival. First, you clear a path to the barn, the snow heavy and wet, clinging to your shovel like a stubborn child. Edwardian farmers faced this daily mainstream fact. Snow removal was critical, as blocked paths could trap you or your livestock, sometimes for days. You dig with steady rhythm, your breath puffing in clouds, until the barn door's free. If I wanted to sculpt, I'd make a snowman, you mutter, chuckling at the thought of a frosty masterpiece in the yard. Inside the barn, you check the animals. Those cows and pigs from earlier are still depending on you. You fork fresh straw into their stalls, the dry rustle a small comfort against the cold. The water troughs are frozen again, and you chip away with an axe, cursing under your breath. You haul buckets of melted snow from the house, warmed on that ever-reliable stove. The cows drink greedily, and you pat one, saying, "Keep that milk coming, or we're both in trouble." A quirky tidbit. Some farmers believed singing to livestock kept them calm in winter, boosting milk yields. You hum a tune, feeling silly but hoping it works. If the cows start dancing, I'm retiring. Next, you head to the woodpile, that crescent-shaped stack you're still banking on for luck. You haul logs to the house, your arms aching but warm from the effort. The fire's your lifeline, as you learned back in the hearth section, and you're not letting it die. You stack the wood carefully, checking for ice that could make it burn poorly. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers burn more wood in winter for necessity or to signal wealth. You're just trying to keep the house above freezing. No showboating needed. The greenhouse calls next, where your kale and cabbages are fighting the good fight. You brush snow off the glass, check the manure layer for heat, and water the plants with more melted snow. It's tedious, but every leaf is a victory against winter's menu of porridge and potatoes. Back in the house, you sweep ash from the stove, a dusty job that leaves you coughing. Beats coal dust, you think, recalling stories of city folk choking on their fancy heaters. You check the pantry too, eyeing those potatoes and that smoked fish from your barter with Jenkins. No signs of rot, thank goodness. The kids are supposed to help, but they're outside, sliding on a frozen patch of yard. You yell, "Get in here before you're shoveling till Easter." Asterisk. They scamper in, cheeks red, and you hand them a bucket to fetch more snow for melting. They grumble, but you grin. Tough love builds character. You check the barn roof again, wary of snow build-up. A collapse would be catastrophic, and you're not risking it. You climb a ladder, shovel in hand, and clear the worst of it, the cold numbing your fingers despite those mittens. By afternoon, you're back at the woodpile, splitting logs to keep ahead. Each swing of the axe is a defiance of the cold, a promise to keep the fire going. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow ironic. In this freeze-and survey your farm. The paths are clear, the animals fed, the greenhouse intact. It's a small win, but winter's a long game. You think of that ice house, keeping your food safe, and the community trades that bolster your supplies. Every chore ties into the bigger fight. As dusk falls, you trudge back to the house, the snow glowing blue in the fading light. You're bone-tired, but the farm's still humming along. You sit by the stove, warming your hands, and feel a flicker of pride. These chores aren't glamorous, but they're the heartbeat of your survival, keeping you one step ahead of the cold. You're cooped up in the farmhouse, the walls creaking as the wind howls like a chorus of grumpy ghosts. The snow's piled so high outside, it's practically knocking on the windows, and you're stuck indoors, battling the creeping dread of cabin fever. Winter's not just freezing your fields, it's testing your sanity, and you're scrambling to keep yourself and your family from climbing the walls in this Edwardian snowbound life. The kitchen's your headquarters, the stove's glow, still kicking, thank goodness, casting a warm circle of light. You're pacing, trying to shake off the restlessness that comes with being trapped for days. Mainstream fact. Edwardian farmers often spent weeks indoors during harsh winters, with blizzards making even short trips to the barn a gamble. Cabin fever wasn't just a phrase, it was a real struggle, fraying nerves and sparking squabbles. You catch the kids bickering over a wooden toy, and you intervene, saying, "Keep it up," and you're both scrubbing pots till spring. Asterisk. They quiet down, but you know it's only a matter of time before the next spat. To keep busy, you pull out a deck of cards, worn from years of use, and deal a round of whist. It's a simple game, but it pulls everyone to the table, even your spouse, who's usually mending socks, like those holy ones from the clothing section. You tease them about their poker face, or lack thereof, and get a laugh. A quirky tidbit. Some farmers believed playing cards in winter invited bad luck, like a storm or a sick cow, but you're not superstitious mostly. If a blizzard hits, I'm blaming you kids. Asterisk, you joke, winking as you lay down a winning hand. You turn to storytelling next, gathering everyone by the fire. You spin tales of your grandfather's farming days, embellishing just enough to keep the kids wide-eyed. They love the one about the cow that wandered into a snowdrift and came back with a frozen tail. True story, mostly. You encourage them to tell their own, and soon they're inventing tales about talking chickens. It's silly, but it's a lifeline, keeping the gloom at bay. Historians still argue whether these storytelling sessions were about entertainment or passing down survival knowledge. You figure it's both. A good yarn warms the heart as much as that stove warms the room. When the stories run dry, you pull out a sewing project, mending a torn blanket. The kids help, their small hands clumsy but eager, threading needles like they're solving a puzzle. You show them how to stitch, tying it to that coat patching from earlier. It's slow work, but it fills the hours. You also carve a small wooden horse, a gift for the youngest, your knife scraping rhythmically. The shavings fall like tiny snowflakes, and you think, at least these don't need shoveling. Asterisk. The kids watch, mesmerized, and you feel the tension in the house ease a bit. By afternoon, you're desperate for movement. You organize a cleaning spree, sweeping floors, scrubbing pots, rearranging the pantry. You check those potatoes and smoked fish from your barter with Jenkins, making sure they're still good. The kids groan, but you keep them busy, saying, "Idle hands make for cranky farmers." Asterisk. It's not fun, but it's productive, and it keeps the cabin fever from winning. You even try singing. Maybe that cow singing trick works on humans too, and the family joins in, butchering an old folk tune. As evening falls, you light a candle from the miller trade, its flicker a small rebellion against the dark. You read aloud from a tattered book, maybe a Bible or a novel you swapped for last year. The words are soothing, and the kids start to doze, their heads nodding like heavy flowers. You're tired too, but you feel a quiet victory. Cabin fever's a beast, but you're taming it with cards, stories, and sheer stubbornness. You bank the fire, thinking of the chores waiting outside when the snow eases. For now, you're holding the line, keeping your family together in this snowbound world. You're huddled in the kitchen, the stove's familiar glow casting long shadows as the wind rattles the windows like a restless spirit. The cold seeped into your bones, and you're feeling a tickle in your throat, winters hinting at more than just snow. Today, you're brewing traditional remedies, leaning on Edwardian folklore to keep ailments at bay. With no doctor for miles, you're the healer, mixing potions to keep your family fighting fit in this frozen world. You start at the pantry, pulling out a jar of honey from your trade with Widow Margaret. Liquid gold, you think, recalling its sweet tang. Honey's your base, a staple in Edwardian home, remedy's mainstream fact. It was used for everything from coughs to cuts, valued for its natural antiseptic properties long before science confirmed it. You spoon some into a tin cup, the golden syrup catching the firelight. You add hot water from the kettle, warmed on that trusty stove, and stir until it's a steaming drink. If this doesn't fix me, at least it tastes good. You quip, taking a sip that soothes your throat. Next, you rummage for herbs, stored in small cloth bags from last summer's harvest. You grab dried chamomile and peppermint, their scents sharp despite months in storage. You crush them with a mortar and pestle, the rhythmic grind calming your nerves. A quirky tidbit. Some Edwardian farmers swore by boiling onions with sugar to make a cough syrup, claiming it worked miracles. You're not there yet? Onions for dessert? Hard pass, but you keep it in mind, chuckling at the thought of the kids' faces if you tried it. Instead, you steep the herbs in hot water, making a tea that smells like a meadow and tastes like hope. You check on the family, noticing your youngest sniffing. You hand them a cup of the honey chamomile mix, saying, "Drink up, or you'll be sneezing snowflakes." Asterisk. They giggle, sipping reluctantly. You've also got a mustard plaster ready for chest colds, a paste of mustard powder and flour spread on cloth. It's an old trick, warming the skin to ease congestion, but you're careful too much mustard, and it burns like a bad sunburn. You apply it to your spouse's chest, their grumbling drowned out by your assurance it'll help. Historians still argue whether these remedies were effective or just placebo. But out here, you'll take any edge you can get. You head to the cellar, checking for garlic, another folk favourite. You braid a few bulbs, their papery skins rustling, and hang them near the stove to dry further. Garlic's for more than flavouring that stew from your stockpile. You've heard it wards off everything from colds to bad luck. You crush a clove into a salve with lard. Yep, that smokehouse stash again, for minor cuts. It stinks, but it works, and you're not picky when frostbite's a risk. You smirk, thinking, if vampires are real, they're steering clear of this farm. Asterisk. By afternoon, you're brewing a big batch of elderberry syrup, a recipe from your grandmother. You've got dried berries from a fall forage, and you simmer them with honey and a pinch of ginger. It's for fevers, or so the old folks say, and you bottle it in jars, the dark liquid gleaming like a potion. The kids watch, fascinated, and you let them stir, warning, spill this, and you're scrubbing jars till summer. Asterisk. They focus, and you feel a pang of pride. They're learning to survive. Just like you. As evening settles, you sip another cup of chamomile tea, the warmth spreading through you. The house smells of herbs and honey, a small rebellion against winter's chill. You check the fire, banking it for the night, and think of those kale plants in the greenhouse, fighting their own battle. These remedies tie you to the past, to generations who faced the same cold and won. You're not a doctor, but you're keeping the family going, one spoonful at a time. You're gathered around the kitchen table, the stove's glow painting your faces in flickering gold as the wind howls outside like a choir of restless wolves. The long winter nights are wearing on you, but tonight you're leaning on faith and festivities to lift spirits and keep the darkness at bay. In this Edwardian farmhouse, celebrations and rituals are your anchor, tying you to hope and community, even when snow buries the world outside. You light a candle, one of those tallow ones from your trade with the Millicent, place it in the window, a small beacon against the gloom. Mainstream fact: religious faith was a cornerstone for many Edwardian farmers, with 80% of rural households in places like England and North America attending church or holding home services regularly, especially in winter when isolation hit hard. You pull out a worn Bible, its pages soft from years of use, and read a passage aloud. The kids listen, half dozing, their eyelids heavy but their hearts a little lighter. You choose something about perseverance, feeling it's as much for you as for them. Tonight's special, it's close to Christmas, and you're planning a modest celebration. You've saved a jar of blackberry jam from that stockpile you worked so hard on, and you spread it on fresh baked bread from the stove. The kids' eyes light up, and you grin, saying, Asterisk, don't get used to this. Jam's rarer than a sunny day. Asterisk, a quirky tidbit. Some farmers believed hanging holly over the door kept evil spirits out during the solstice. You've got a sprig up, not because you buy the superstition, but because it looks festive and, well, why tempt fate? Asterisk, you think, chuckling. You organize a small sing-along, pulling out old carols everyone knows. Your voice isn't great, but the kids join in, their off-key notes filling the room with warmth. You think of that cow singing trick from the barn chores. Maybe it works on humans too. The songs are a bridge to better days, reminding you of church gatherings before the snow locked you in. You tell a story about last year's Christmas, when Jenkins brought over a fiddle, and you all danced until midnight. The kids beg for a repeat, and you promise, if we survive this winter, we'll dance till the cows join in. Asterisk. You've also got a tradition of making simple decorations paper chains from old almanac pages strung across the kitchen. The kids cut and paste, their fingers sticky with flour glue, giggling as they argue over whose chain is longest. It's messy, but it keeps them busy, and you're grateful for anything that fights cabin fever's grip from those long days indoors. Historians still argue whether these winter festivities were about faith, community, or just survival through distraction. You figure it's all three. A good carol or a sweet bite of jam can make even the coldest night feel bearable. By evening, you're planning a small feast for tomorrow. You'll use some of that smoked fish from Jenkins and those kale leaves from the greenhouse. It's not lavish, but it's a break from porridge, and you know it'll lift spirits. You check the pantry, pulling out a few apples to bake, a luxury worth celebrating. You quip, imagining the kids' joy at the rare treat. You also set aside a small gift for each child, maybe a carved wooden toy or a knit scarf wrapped in cloth scraps. It's simple, but it's enough to make the day special. As night deepens, you bank the fire, the embers glowing like a promise. The candle in the window flickers, and you feel a quiet strength. Faith and festivities aren't just traditions. They're your shield against winter's weight, tying you to the community, to the past, and to the hope of spring. You glance at the holly over the door, half smiling. Maybe it's keeping spirits at bay, or maybe it's just you, holding the line with songs and stubborn hope. You're braced against the wind, the kind that roars down from the hills like a freight train with no brakes, piling snow against your farmhouse until it feels like the walls might buckle. Your focus now is fortifying your home, outsmarting the blizzards that threaten to bury you in this Edwardian winter. Every board you nail, every draft you seal, is a defiance of the storm's wrath, and you're not letting it win. You start at the porch, shovel in hand, clearing drifts that have crept up overnight. The snow's heavy, clinging to your boots like it's got a personal grudge. Mainstream fact: blizzards in the early 1900s could dump feet of snow in hours, with wind speeds hitting 50 miles an hour, isolating farms for weeks. You dig a path to the barn, knowing those animals your lifeline from earlier need you. The wind stings your face, sneaking past that scarf you knitted, and you mutter, "If I wanted a facial, I'd have stayed in the city." Asterisk. The kids giggle from the doorway, and you shoot them a look, keep laughing, and you're shoveling next. Asterisk. Inside, you check the windows, where frost patterns spiderweb across the glass. You've stuffed rags into the frames, but the wind's relentless, finding every crack. You mix more clay and straw, not quite cow dung, thank goodness, and smear it along the sills, sealing gaps. A quirky tidbit: some farmers nailed old carpets over windows for extra insulation, claiming it worked better than shutters. You've got a tattered rug you're tempted to try, but for now, you double up on blankets, hanging them like curtains. It's not pretty, but it keeps the heat from that trusty stove inside. The roof's your next worry. You climb a ladder, the rungs slick with ice, and check for weak spots. A heavy snow load could cave it in, and you're not gambling with your family's safety. You shovel off what you can, the snow sliding down in clumps. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers overbuilt their roofs out of foresight or just got lucky with sturdy designs. You're just glad your beams are holding, but you reinforce a loose shingle with a spare nail, cursing as the cold numbs your fingers. Back on the ground, you check the chimney, sweeping out ash to prevent a fire hazard. Learned that one the hard way, you think, recalling a smoky mishap years ago. The fire's your lifeline, as you know from the hearth days, and a clogged flue could choke the house. You also bank snow around the foundation, a trick to insulate the cellar where your potatoes and apples sit. It's counterintuitive, but snow's a decent barrier against the wind, and you're using winter against itself. By midday, you're hauling more wood from that crescent-shaped pile, still hoping it's lucky to keep the stove roaring. The kids are inside, tasked with stuffing more rags into cracks. You call out, "Miss a spot," and we're all sleeping in the barn with the pigs. Asterisk. They laugh, but you hear them working harder. You check the barn next, reinforcing its doors with extra boards. A blizzard could rip them open, leaving your animals exposed, and you're not risking those cows and chickens. Evening brings a lull in the storm, and you take a moment to survey your work. The house stands firm, the barn's secure, and the fire's burning strong. You think of that ice house, keeping your food safe, and the community trades that bolster your supplies. Every nail, every shovelful, is a piece of your defense against winter's fury. You're exhausted, but the farm's holding together, and that's enough for now. You head inside, the warmth of the kitchen, a small victory, ready to face whatever the next storm throws at you. You're in the kitchen, the stove's warmth battling the chill that seeps through the walls, as you watch your kids bundle up in their patched coats. The snow outside is a relentless blanket, but you're focused on their roles, now chores and games that shape them into resilient young farmers in this Edwardian winter. They're not just kids, they're part of the farm's heartbeat, and you're guiding them through the cold with a mix of work and play. You hand your eldest a bucket, pointing to the snow piled against the door. "Scoop it for melting water, and don't dawdle," asterisk, you say, half smiling as they groan. Edwardian children were vital to farm's survival, mainstream fact. Kids as young as 6 often handled daily tasks like fetching water or feeding livestock, contributing to the family's survival. You've trained them to haul snow to the stove, where it melts into water for the animals, or that chamomile tea from your remedy days. They trudge out, the bucket clanking, and you feel a pang of pride they're learning the ropes, even if they'd rather be sledding. Back inside, you set the younger ones to sweeping ash from the hearth. Miss a spot, and we're eating ash-flavoured porridge, asterisk, you tease, getting a giggle. A quirky tidbit: some farmers taught kids to scatter ash on icy paths, believing it gave better traction than sand. You try it, sending them to sprinkle some outside, and they treat it like a game, tossing it like confetti. You shake your head, thinking, if only they worked this hard on the real chores. Asterisk. But it's effective, and the path to the barn is less of a skating rink now. You take them to the barn next, where the cows and chickens, those divas from earlier, need feeding. You show the eldest how to measure grain, careful not to spill, while the youngest tosses straw into the stalls. They're clumsy, but they're learning, and you correct them gently, saying, "Feed the cows, not the floor." Asterisk. The barn's warm with animal breath, a contrast to the icy yard, and you're grateful for the shelter you fortified during those blizzard preparations. Historians still argue whether children's chores were about necessity or building character. You know it's both. Every bucket they carry makes them tougher for this life. Playtime's just as important, and you carve out moments for it. You help them build a snow fort in the yard, packing the walls tight. It's a game, but it teaches them to work together, just like those community trades with Jenkins and the Millers. They ambush each other with snowballs, their laughter cutting through the silence. You join in, lobbing a soft one, and laugh, "Miss me, and you're mucking stalls tomorrow." Asterisk. It's a brief escape from the grind, and you see their spirits lift, cheeks red from cold and joy. Back inside, you teach them a card game by the fire, using that worn deck from your cabin fever days. It's simple, but it sharpens their focus, and you weave in lessons about counting grain sacks or planning wood rations. They don't even realize they're learning, and you keep it that way. You also show them how to mend a sock, tying it to that clothing repair you did earlier. One hole, one frozen toe. Asterisk, you say, and they nod, threading needles with exaggerated care. As evening falls, you gather them for a story, something light to end the day. You tell of a legendary farmer who tamed a blizzard with a song, and they laugh, begging for more. The fire crackles, tying this moment to every other night you've fought winter's weight. You're shaping them, not just to survive, but to thrive, in a world that doesn't give second chances. They're your legacy, and as you bank the stove, you know they're ready for whatever comes next. You stand at the frosted window, your breath fogging the glass as you gaze across fields buried under snow, their edges softened like a dream fading at dawn. The Edwardian winter has tested every ounce of your grit, but now you're clinging to the distant promise of spring, planning for the thaw that will break winter's chokehold. Your mind's already turning to the fields, the seeds, and the life waiting beneath the ice, even as the cold presses in. You pull on your coat, that beeswax-smeared beast from the clothing days, and step outside, the snow crunching under your boots. The air's still sharp, but there's a hint of change, a faint warmth in the sun that wasn't there a month ago. Mainstream fact. Edwardian farmers began planning for spring as early as February, mapping out planting schedules based on almanacs and weather patterns, knowing a late frost could ruin a year's crop. You carry a tattered almanac, its pages dog-eared, and study the dates, calculating when to sow that winter rye from the greenhouse section. If I plant too early, I'm screwed. Too late, same deal. Asterisk, you mutter, chuckling at your own paranoia. You check the barn, where the animals are restless, sensing the shift. The cows low softly, their breath steaming, and you toss them extra feed from that stockpile you've guarded so fiercely. A quirky tidbit. Some farmers believed scattering salt on the barn floor in late winter brought good luck for the planting season. You try it, sprinkling a handful, thinking, if this works, I'm salting the whole farm next year. Asterisk. The chickens cluck, still laying sparingly, but you're hopeful for more eggs. Soon spring's light might coax them into action. Back in the house, you gather the family to plan. You spread out seeds from the cellar, those turnip and parsnip packets you've kept safe from mice. The kids sort them, their small hands steady now from months of chores. You show them how to test seed viability, soaking a few in water to see if they sprout. No sprouts, no crops, asterisk, you say, and they nod, taking it seriously. You're also checking tools sharpening the plough, mending harnesses because spring work waits for no one. Historians still argue whether Edwardian farmers' optimism for spring was driven by necessity or stubborn hope. You're betting on both. Every seed you sort is a bet against winter's lingering grip. You trudge to the greenhouse, where the kale's still holding on, its leaves a defiant green. You clear snow from the glass, ensuring the weak sunlight reaches them. The manure layer's still warm, a trick you're proud of, and you add more straw for insulation. You think of that ice house, still keeping your smoked fish and butter fresh, and the community trades that bolstered your supplies. It's all connected, every chore, every plan, tying you to the thaw you can almost taste. By afternoon, you're sketching field layouts, deciding where to plant oats and where to let the soil rest. You're dreaming of green fields, of warmth, of days without mittens. The kids chime in, suggesting absurd crops like candy trees, and you laugh. Keep dreaming, and you're weeding the whole field alone. Asterisk. They giggle, and you feel the weight of winter lift. Just a bit. You're not there yet, but you're planning, and that's enough to keep you going. As evening falls, you sit by the stove. Its glow softer now, less desperate. You sip chamomile tea from your remedy stash, the warmth spreading through you like a promise. The kids are asleep, their faces peaceful, and you feel a quiet strength. Winter's been a beast, but you've outsmarted it with fire, food, and faith. You bank the stove, the embers glowing like tiny stars, and let your mind drift to spring. The fire crackles softly now, its rhythm slow, like a heartbeat winding down. You're wrapped in a blanket, the house quiet except for the gentle creak of settling wood. The snow outside is still deep, but it's losing its edge, softening at the edges like a memory. You imagine the fields waking up, green shoots pushing through the earth, the air warm with the scent of turned soil. The animals, the kale, the community, they've carried you this far, and you're grateful. Your eyes grow heavy, the stove's warmth pulling you towards sleep. Let the cold fade, let the worries slip away. Spring's coming, slow but sure, and you've earned this rest. Drift now, into dreams of sunlit days, where the world is soft and green again. Sleep well. Asterisk.